Hey guys, thanks for watching Mad for Swoo. Today we're going over a deck I'm really excited about. It's Yoda from the new Twilight of the Republic set, and a red 30-point base. I went 30 point over Tarkin Town. I think we need that extra 5 damage to get to more of an end game with Yoda. This deck's super fun to play. You basically scry your deck from multiple ways, not just Yoda's power, and you end up with a bunch of cards in your hand and can get to a lot of different options really quickly. For that reason, we have different one-ofs and things like that to really benefit from that filtering. Your turn 1, we're going A-Wings, we're going Sabine. R2's huge in this deck. You can apply upgrades to him as well to get to that 6 HP really early and keep that scrying your deck going the whole game. We're also going Jyn Erso. She's really nice to throw 1 or 2 of in for the Rebel synergy, and also to get her to a 4 damage unit with Saboteur when someone on the enemy team has been defeated, which is kind of the point of this deck. And then we also throw in some Barriss Offee as well. She's just a 1/1. And her power can come into effect. I kind of look at it as similar to Sabine's, where it's not something you're building around, but it's nice if it ever happens. But she's nice because she turns on Force Throw immediately at the start of the game. And any other turn, if you have an extra resource or 2, you put out a Barriss, and now Force Throw's turned on again. So you don't need to wait for those big Force bombs before you can do that. And you can really hold big exploit units, big booty leaders, etc. hostage, because you can one-shot them with a Force Throw and all the big cost units you're going to see coming up. We also do things like Fleet Lieutenant. Just one of, but something to keep in the sideboard as well if we need to go wide and use that Rebel synergy to hit for 5 and keep initiative right off the bat. Yoda's 2 staples, obviously. His draw card is big. You'll notice in this deck we have quite a few cards that draw cards. Obviously, when you're scrying your deck, you want to be drawing cards because you're able to kind of dump them at will. And then really our turn 2 play really centers around You're My Only Hope, as you would have suspected. Basically, you use Yoda's ability. You would put a 5-drop on top of your deck, play You're My Only Hope, and play that 5-drop on the second turn of the game. In this deck, we have some extremely powerful 5-drops. We have Anakin, we have Ki-Adi, we have, if you need to go space, we have Obi-Wan's Aether Sprite, which is really nice to ping 2 damage onto an enemy unit. I'm running 1 Poe. Poe's one you got to be a little bit careful about in this deck because he's discarding cards from your hand to do a significant ability, obviously, with discard or defeating an upgrade, or doing 8 damage, which would be on the 3rd turn of the game. But you're losing those cards, so it's not a card you want to run a ton of, but it's nice to have that 1 big bomb since he is, arguably the best card in the game. I'm running 1 Rey too. I like her 7 booty coming out on turn 2, and also the heal. We do have a few non-heroic sort of cards and Jedi and things like that, to be able to give them a shield as well. That early on in the game, when you're only hoping them out early, would be huge. We have a couple Concord Dawns for Sentinel. The nice thing about scrying your deck is you can just kind of dump it if you don't need it. It's not like I compare this deck to Chirrut a lot, Red Chirrut from the first set, which I played a lot of, where you drew your cards and you really couldn't get out of a bad draw. Whereas Yoda, you almost always have what you need. And speaking of that, I threw in a couple techs as well. This deck does tend to go a little bit long. I'd call it mid-range. But tech's really nice. You could You're My Only Hope cards, but if you don't draw You're My Only Hope, it's nice to have that tech. You can smuggle them out for 4, and then you're smuggling anything, especially upgrades and things like that. We've got a few heroic resolves. We've got 1 Jedi lightsaber. You could go up to 2 if you wanted. I really like the lower cost upgrades personally. And then as far as removal, just a Rival's Fall. We have a lot of synergy with Force Throw here. So remember, you can do that to your opponent's hand too, to get rid of that 1 big bomb you think they're holding, or Force Throw something that you've scried for yourself, knowing how much cost you need to defeat that unit. And for that reason, I didn't throw in a ton of removal and things like that. When we get into the bigger units, we're talking about just one kit Fisto. He's just a big, like if you need to go aggro 7/6 Saboteur, his coordinatability is nice, but the bottom line is the third turn of the game with your My Only Hope, you can get out a 7/6 Saboteur, which has a force trait. You know, you get an upgrade on him or something like that, and you're hitting for 9, 10, 11 if you're activating your Heroic Resolve. We also have an Obi-Wan, just to provide that Sentinel coverage, and also to boost up with energy, with experience onto your other Force units. And that's where someone like Barriss is really nice too, because they're typically just going to leave her out. She's a 1/1. She doesn't do a whole lot. They're not always going to think like, oh, now they're going to use Force Throw because they have Barriss. They're not going to be thinking that. They're just going to think, it's a 1/1 body and move on. Whereas Obi-Wan, you know, he dies and they've left Barriss out. Well, suddenly now she's a 3/3 with you drawing a card, which is a little bit harder to deal with. And it's just an option. Hopefully you'll have bigger Force units out at that time, but at least she's something. We go 3 Lukes. If you don't have 3 Lukes, don't worry about it. There's so many Force options here that you can kind of fill in as necessary. If you have 1 Luke, you could still play this deck. It's not like some of the bigger decks like Kira, let's say, where if you don't have these Vaders and Avengers and things like that, well, I can't even play this deck. Well, Yoda Red really is adaptable because we have so much choice now in terms of big boy Jedi. We got 1 Mace Windu. You could run 2, ambushing, readying unit. All these cards, especially think of Mace when you're My Only Hoping. You're playing him at 5 resources instead of 7. He's almost always going to be able to kill what they played at 5 resources or 4 resources, because it's likely not going to have a bigger booty than that. Then he's readying, then he's going again. He's turning on Force Throw. We get into another upgrade of the Forces with Me. You know, you throw it on. They're going to have to go after one of your Force units, but whoever you have left, use the Forces with Me. Now they're shielded with experience and attacking. You're not often going to have initiative in this deck because of Yoda's ability, taking a turn. But by playing all these big units 2 turns sooner, and also having access to Force Throw, you have that removal. It's not like them going first is the end of the world typically. So that's really nice. Another card I threw in because I tried to really stick in the heroic shell is For a Cause. Yes, for the damage. We all know it from Sabine, for example. But the scry ability on For a Cause, where you can, any of those 4 cards you pick up, you can order them on top of your deck and discard the ones you don't need, is huge. Because when you think about it, now you're activating when Yoda flips, you draw the top card of your deck and remove a unit with that cost. And so you can put a big boy on top with For a Cause to use as removal, but then you also know the next 2 cards you're going to draw going into next turn as well. So it's really valuable for more uses than I think we've used it for in the past with Sabine, which is really, really nice. Other than that, we have a couple redemptions. It's a nice big 8 cost. It's the highest cost card you have in this deck for that Force Throw. So if they somehow have pumped up their leader or something like that, redemption's hitting for 8 with a Force Throw. So you're pretty much able to one-shot whoever, and plus the Sentinel and Restore is really nice too. Other than that, Yoda is, like I said, really fun deck to play. And really the sideboard too is very versatile, where if you need to go aggro wide, well, we have that Rebel synergy. We throw in a few more Fleet Lieutenants, another Jin, and suddenly going wide is fine as well. You could throw in against control pillages. You can throw in K2SO and go for hand destruction because we still have Force Throw. So really, another point I would just make quickly is if you're going to add any non-heroic cards beyond what we have already, think about taking out For a Cause, because now you've gone over that sort of card limit. And really just tons of options. Mid-range, if they're using bounties or upgrades, well, you have 1 Fang Fighter, which you're scrying, you're more likely to be able to find it to delete upgrades. You have Poe who can delete upgrades, and then you can sideboard in 2 more Fang Fighters if you'd like. If you're doing that, probably get rid of 4 Cause. But you have the ability to react to almost anything against aggro. Throw in some Village Protectors, throw in another Obi-Wan, throw in, you know, any Restore. So it can really adapt. I stayed away from Wrecker in this one. Obviously a fantastic card. There's a few reasons for that. No Force, no Rebel. He's a 6 instead of a 5 cost. So with that, You're My Only Hope, you really on turn 2 want to be dropping a 5-er. And so we kind of lean towards more 5 drops than we do to 6 drops. Still have the odd 6 and 7, but 5 is really the key number here, because you want to get that big boy out really early. And then with Wrecker, his power is you're deleting a resource, which we don't want to do in this deck. We have techs, we have all these big units that, yes, we're cheating out for earlier, but we do want to get to 5, 6, 7 resources still. So experiment with it. That's it's been super fun. You draw a bunch of cards. You can scry and pick through your deck to find cards you want. You're not stuck with your hand. You can react to almost anything. You can go aggressive. You can go really control-y and get to Yoda's flip, where you're essentially defeating a unit with your top card if you've played it correctly. And restoring, you can be shielding your people, you can be healing your people, tons of options. I will say that with Yoda's ability, just one final thought, the sequencing does take a little bit of practice. I'm going to show you shortly some testing I've done just on Force Table because Carabas is down right now. But you'll see the odd misplay from me where I'm just rushing too much, and if you forget to activate Yoda's ability, then you screw up the flip, you screw up the You're My Only Hope, because you've not set the top card of your deck. So it does take a little bit of practicing. Just think of Yoda's action ability almost always comes first before you're doing these other things, unless with someone like R2 or something, you already know it's a card that you want to use on top of your deck. But just kind of think of it that way. And then otherwise, yeah, the key cards are really You're My Only Hope and Force Throw, and react accordingly. But super fun deck to play. I'll show you some gameplay footage right now, and please leave a comment and like and subscribe on what you think. I haven't seen a Yoda Red video on YouTube yet, which I'm a little bit surprised about. We've seen other colors, but I think it's going to be fairly significant moving forward, and I guess we'll see. But we have no Boba, so let's go have some fun with Yoda. All right, everyone, here's some gameplay of the Yoda Red deck we were just talking about. I'm going to show you 3 various games. We're going to go an aggressive opponent, a mid-range opponent, and a control opponent. Obviously on Force Table, so it is what it is. But this is an Anakin Red deck, which is really aggressive, and I think it'll pop off here shortly. So you'll see we're playing a Sabine. Turn 1, they're going Jin. Resource our big ship, because we're hopefully going to defeat them before that. And now we're just going to get some damage, and we're obviously going to play the sort of control sort of matchup against our aggressive opponent and take care of Jin. Just keep clearing the board before we can get our big units out in time. They get their Saboteur. We'll throw it in R2, get that scry going with Yoda. So see, because a unit left play, it can be theirs or ours. Now we can draw another card. We already scried with R2. Let's scry again with Yoda. Yeah, we're not going to need that upgrade for now. Put out another Sabine. Just making the most of our resources. It's something that the red chariot that I keep referencing that I played in set 1 struggled with, is the cards you drew is the cards you drew, and it was really hard to get out of that. Whereas Yoda, even if you get a bad draw or you're on a turn 2 and you got things against an aggro opponent that you don't necessarily like, you can scry your way out of it. So again, we don't really care about the base damage here. We're just using R2 to keep filtering those cards. We don't have a forced unit, we have a forced throw, obviously. So it's a little bit useless to us right now. So that's a little bit of what we're fishing for here. But someone left play, so let's activate Yoda. Keep things rolling. Yeah, we'll get rid of the big ship there. Fighter can go away. I think that deck does have a Heroic Resolve and Twice the Pride's in it. Twice the Pride's a huge card for Anakin Red. So see, You're My Only Hope comes up now. It's useful at all points in the game. So we'll keep trying to scry those cards there. The question becomes, what do we do with EnjoyMusic, right? Because we're already at 5. We could just play him for 5. When he comes up next, do we want to use You're My Only Hope and cheat out Ben for 1 cheaper? And it doesn't always have to be perfect. Like, it's even getting Ben out 1 turn earlier against aggro. You know, ask anyone who's played against Sabine. It can save you the game, like, to have that Sentinel. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We'll throw Ben on top. So this is where I have a little bit of a misplay. I forget, because when you're on Force Table, you forget a lot and you just rush through it. And we're just kind of giving you the general idea, but you forget I'm playing against the Saboteur. So I do all this trouble to throw to Sentinel, only to realize that, oh yeah, it's a Saboteur. So we're going to have to take care of that Saboteur here shortly. But still nice to have a Ben out either way. Now we get up to 6, and now you can see where, by cheating out someone early, now we can do a EnjoyMusic and a Force Throw if we want. Yeah, so let's delete the Saboteur with Ben. And let's get a Force Body out there. So this is ideally where you would have like a Redemption or something to Force Throw into Anakin and just one-shot him. But right now it's kind of like, okay, Anakin's not a huge threat. He doesn't have a ton of damage on his base. Let's get the board here, get Coordinate rolling. This is I'm deciding, like, okay, maybe I should just attack with R2 first. Get to see that there's a Mace on top. I'm going to keep Mace on top because we're coming up to 7 resources anyway. So with EnjoyMusic, by them playing their second card, it allows us to draw 2 cards. So we get Mace, which we can then Force Throw. But we didn't need to, because Anakin had damage already. But you could have, like, you can see how by scrying and getting those cards on top of your deck, it allows you to either draw them, or You're My Only Hope them, or Yoda flip and use them as removal. There's just more options for your big cost cards than there has been in the past.
I don't deny there's some strange evolutionary process going on, but mankind.
So now we've got to play a bit of catch up here. We didn't have ideal draws, and it's a super aggro deck, so obviously we're going to fall behind a Fleet Lieutenant into a Fleet Lieutenant. And now we're thinking, okay, we got to take care of business a little bit here. So we'll obviously take out the Saboteur. We can do that using Mace. Kill Ambush, take it out, ready himself. See, now we're going to start that scry process, because remember, we can flip Yods here, and we don't like that space threat. But what Yoda allows you to do is, we'll just remember, Yoda's going to restore when he attacks too. So we're going to use Yoda's ability, and we just want to get an ideal card on top of the deck for when he flips. So let's clear their board, knowing full well that when Yoda flips, we're going to have to deal with that space threat. So you just see the Mace doing the work here, just these go wide aggro decks. And we didn't even get Mace out early, but you can imagine when you got him out early. And we know with the A-Wing that's all the only damage we really needed to do there was a Jin with Yoda's ability. Yoda's out, we've cleared the board, we start restoring, and now it's gonna completely flip. You notice the hand gets really large in this deck too. We've got Kiadi who's drawing, we've got Anakin who's drawing, we've got the Yoda unit when he dies he's drawing, Obi-Wan when he dies he's drawing. All the while you're just shuffling around those cards on the top of your deck. Move them to the bottom, move the cards out of your hand you don't need. And it's so much easier to get what you need in most games. Hit with Yoda right away, let's restore right away. And now you can sort of feel that our opponents ran out of steam here. Once those aggro decks start getting to 7, 8, 9 resources, it can swing really quickly. So we'll just have a little fun and we'll pump up our Jedis. Right now I'm just thinking like, okay, let's see how big we can get them and what we can do. Let's activate Heroic Resolve, because why not? We'll throw in a 14-point swing. You can imagine if that was on someone like a Kit Fisto too, who's also a Saboteur. You'd be swinging for around that with Saboteur, with Overwhelm. And obviously the timing is right. You don't want to throw it out there and have your upgrades deleted, but it's really nice to have, and especially with tech too, you can smuggle them out later in the game like this and just do those massive swings for damage where your opponent has kind of lost the will to live. So what's happening here for Anakin. The game's over here, but you can see I'm just fooling around on Force Table and pumping people up, and it's quite entertaining. So Yoda would get a shield here moving forward. And that's that. Let's move into a mid-range. Sahan Green. This will be a popular deck too now, with all the ramp and Boba being gone. So, and being able to ramp really quickly and just cheat out units sort of in a different way from Yoda, right? We expect to see some Falcons and things like that. Get out of Sabine. We can't use Yoda's ability because the unit didn't leave play, which is pretty much always going to be the case on the first turn. So you're playing like a Bosk or somebody who's pinging you, which is a really interesting thing to talk about too, is going into those bounty sort of ping decks like we're seeing in Django, sort of Space One now, is Yoda just needs any unit to leave play. So at least if they're pinging your units away, think of like a Barasofe or something, you're at least still, they're helping you scry your hand to get an appropriate response. So yeah, it hurts to lose your units, especially with boss collecting bounties and things like that, but they're also just helping you respond to it more easily. There you'll see the turn 2, You're My Only Hope. We can put Kiadi on top of our deck, and now he's out on the second turn of the game. It's a 5/7, he's coordinate. Who's going to draw us cards? Should we be able to keep him around? And it's a lot easier to keep him around when he's out turn 2. Because realistically, how are they doing 7 damage? They'll need something like we have in our deck, like a Force Throw. This yellow Old Han green base deck is one I tried to build around strategic intervention, get it, or strategic acumen, where you can cheat people out even further by putting it on one of these, sort of like a Republic tactical officer, where they fleet lieutenant one of your people early, but then they're kind of useless. Well, you can throw a strategic on them and then give them a 6 booty with further use into the game. The opponent will resupply, which is just really going to allow us to take control of the board here. They're essentially ramping to play a big boy unit, which we've already done ourselves on the second turn with Kiadi. And we're having those 1-drops like in R2 you turn on Coordinate, you're drawing more cards, they're going to flip Han. This is another misplay too. I forgot that they had ramped and that they would be flipping Han because of it. Whereas then maybe you save like a Force Throw for him to flip and then you Force Throw instead of R2. Either way, it's no big deal here because we've turned on Coordinate, we're drawing cards anyway. So it's, if we're not going to take him out this turn, we'll take him out next turn. It's Force Throw time. Bye-bye, Han. The nice thing about deleting Han too is at the start of his turn is that now his action is useless for the entire turn. Whereas if you kill him at the end of the turn, then he resets right away and he can still add a resource and cheat out another unit. So it's actually saying it was a misplay to not save a Force Throw. It maybe wasn't. It's almost sometimes better just to go into next turn, let him hit you for 4, and then just take him out next turn and shut down his turn. So we'll just keep scrying with R2. It's a ton of work out of R2 you've seen already in these videos. Just a 1-drop with the 4 booty is so hard to get rid of, and then you're scrying with him, you're scrying with Yoda, you're using the other cards to do the same sort of thing, and it just really adds up. See the various options we have in our hand. It's a nice thing about this deck is being able to run different various 1-drops and 2-drops, and it's just so much easier to react than, say, only running 3 Luke Skywalkers or something, and then you draw 2 and you can't play the other one because it's unique, and it's better to have a whole host of Jedis. This is where 4 cause, it's almost like in this situation we almost have too many options for us. 5 cost Anakin, 7 cost Luke, we've got a Jin, we've got a tech we could use to start smuggling, we've So then with 4 of Cause, it's like, what cards do I want to save on top? We're not quite close enough to Yoda's flip to really care about leaving a big one on top for removal, so we don't want any of them. Let's just get rid of all of them. So now we want to get LiQWYD's coordinate back online to draw us cards. So let's toss out an Anakin. Now both their coordinates are online. So yeah, for LiQWYD's to work, they need to play 2 cards. It's not enough for them to attack with 2 cards. They actually have to play the 2 cards. And then with Anakin, it's just an on-attack. He's drawing a card. And now we're thinking, let's just turn things around here. Let's get some damage on base. It's LiQWYD's card draw. We're up to 7 cards in hand. Now, next turn, we have 9 cards in hand. And just look at that diversity of options in front of you. This is where it's evolved beyond classic blue-red force decks. Is all those options, and it's perfect timing for now. It's a Yoda flip. So realistically, as long as 1 unit leaves play, we can activate Yoda. But the game was over. We didn't even flip them. The game was over before that. The third and final deck we're going to show is a Krennic Green. This is just a control-y type one I had and saved in my force table. So just to give you an idea against more of a control-y type leader. We're obviously going to go as wide as possible aggro. Sabine's a perfect start. See, we have You're My Only Hope in our hand. This is a... You can see where I'm thinking like, okay, I need Sabine to die because then we can use Yoda to put a top card on the deck, but she won't die unless I do that. So now that she's died, we can Yoda. Anakin goes on top. Must have got distracted. I gotta think way too long about that. You're My Only Hope, and here comes Anakin. 5 less, and second turn of the game you have an Anakin. And now we'll try and get his coordinate turned on. I think Power of the Dark Side is a funny one too against these decks because historically, right, you want to go wide with units, but the nice thing with You're My Only Hope is that you only paid 3 to play the unit. So it's essentially, like I look at it as the same essentially as they deleted your second turn play. Even though it cost more on paper, it didn't actually cost you any more than if you played like a Fleet Lieutenant. So now they've lost the power of your dark side out of their hand. And that's kind of okay, because as we bring out bigger units consistently, they only have so many of those. So we'll keep it wide for now. Save tech for smuggling later. Krennic deploys. We play a big boy force unit in LiQWYD because we want to try and draw 2 cards from them playing their second card. Now we can scry for if and when that 2-card draw occurs, we hopefully get a card or two that we want against this matchup. So this is where we're thinking like, okay, do we want to use Yoda's action or we just take initiative? Let's just take initiative, and then we're drawing 2 cards from Kiadi because they played their second card. By doing that, it allowed us to go first. We have 2 Lukes, so one can go in the resources. Let's just force throw. Delete Mr. Krennic. And then even though you have a You're My Only Hope, you could just play Kit for normal cost. Just putting damage on base. Kit dies, but he was, or Kiadi dies because it was such a big body that he essentially deleted all their units. Now we can really activate Yoda. We're gonna throw that upgrade on the bottom because we don't really have a solid upgrade target. We want to get a board presence again here. So this is one where I got a little bit greedy. Like I could have just played Kit on top of my deck with Yoda and then played him out for cheaper, you know, and then I could have resourced or put Jin on away instead of Heroic Resolve and had like a Kit with Heroic Resolve on it or something, but I got greedy and let's see what's on top, and it was only for a cause, but I ended up playing a 3 cost for 3 anyway, so. Yoda goes away. And this is a Yoda flip turn with a possible Kit Fisto play, which would turn on Coordinate. But we're thinking, let's just go wide aggro. We'll Fleet Lieutenant. So this is like a perfect play, right? We activate Yoda because a unit left play from their Vigilance, which brings a You're My Only Hope into our hand that we didn't otherwise have, which allows us to put our Kit on top of our deck, which allows us to deploy Yoda to then draw the Kit we just put there, to delete their unit with an active Yoda, who's gonna restore to. And I could risk it again with You're My Only Hope, which I failed at earlier, or I could just smuggle out a tech. Attack with Yoda, and now I have 4 on board against their 0. They would need like a super laser blast or something. We get rid of You're My Only Hope because really we're just going to try and hit them twice and the game will end. Redemption comes out, heals what little damage there actually is on the base. And now we have a Sentineled space with an A-Wing, an active tech, and where board clearance was easier for control in the past, against this deck, you've seen as much as they can clear our board, the next turn we can replace the entire thing because we're drawing so much and scrying for what we need, plus with the tech smuggle late in the game. What about playing against like Mill too? Like if Mill becomes a thing, it doesn't look like it is right now, but we're going to be having these big power units out way earlier. So it's, wonder if their Mill would work against them with Satine and we could just mill them quicker than they could. Hard to say. And now I'm just having fun with it and throwing out maces and things like that. It's a really fun deck to play, if not just to see all your old friends from all the movies and all the Force units. Thanks for watching, guys. This is Mad for Swoo. Link in the description. Take care.